Welcome to Debug Log, software engineering war stories, architecture decisions, and lessons learned the hard way. Let's dig in. A recent post-mortem by TanStack detailed a supply chain compromise, but the name Mini Shai-Hulud is particularly striking. It invokes images of a sandworm from Dune moving unseen beneath the surface.
And that analogy is surprisingly apt for what occurred. This wasn't a direct attack on TanStack's infrastructure or a vulnerability in NPM itself, but a sophisticated social engineering campaign that led to a worm-like spreading mechanism across the NPM ecosystem.
So a worm in the software supply chain, not necessarily a bug in the code, but something much more insidious that leveraged trust. How did this Mini Shai-Hulud even get its start?
The entry point was purely human. Attackers targeted maintainers of popular NPM packages with phishing, compromising their credentials. Once they had a single maintainer's NPM token and password, they could then publish malicious versions of existing packages or even entirely new deceptive ones using those legitimate credentials. It was a classic case of identity theft enabling a much larger exploit.
So the initial breach wasn't some zero-day exploit, but rather someone falling for a well-crafted email. That's a crucial distinction because it shifts the focus from purely technical vulnerabilities to the human element in security.
Precisely. The post-mortem emphasizes that it was social engineering, a phishing attack, that granted the initial access. This isn't a new vector, but it's consistently effective, especially against individuals who have elevated permissions within critical infrastructure like the NPM registry. The compromise then rippled outward from that single point of failure.
And that ripple effect is where the worm aspect truly comes into play. It wasn't just about defacing a single package. The goal was to spread and persist. What did this Mini Shai-Hulud actually do once it landed on a system?
The malicious payload operated in two distinct stages, which is a key indicator of its sophistication. The first stage was designed for stealth and reconnaissance. When a compromised package was installed, a pre-install script would execute. This script's primary objective was to exfiltrate sensitive environment variables, specifically .npmrc and .env files.
For listeners not familiar, .npmrc contains NPM authentication tokens, essentially the keys to publish or manage NPM packages. And .env files often hold other crucial API keys and secrets. So stage 1 was about stealing more keys to unlock more doors.
Exactly. This initial phase was quick, quiet, and designed to harvest credentials for further lateral movement. The attackers weren't looking to damage the immediate system. They were looking to broaden their access across the supply chain. This is the worm burrowing under the surface, gathering intelligence before the main attack.
And what was the main attack? The second stage? What did it unleash after it had collected its initial haul of credentials?
After a delay, typically 12 to 24 hours, and only if certain environmental conditions were met, like not running in a CI environment, being on a specific operating system, and not detecting a debugger, the second stage would activate. This stage installed a persistent backdoor. On Linux, it would create a systemd service, on macOS, a launch agent.
A persistent backdoor. So it wasn't just a one-off execution, it wanted to stay resident on the system and continue to operate.
Correct. This backdoor was configured to execute code from a remote server every 2 minutes. This gave the attackers continuous remote control over the compromised machine, allowing them to download and run arbitrary code at will. It effectively turned the victim's machine into a persistent zombie, ready for further instruction.
That's a significant escalation from simply stealing credentials. It implies a much deeper level of control and a longer-term objective. It's not just about getting in, it's about staying in and using the infected machine as a launching pad.
And the environmental checks are telling. They wanted to avoid detection by security tools or automated build systems, which often operate in CI environments or have debuggers attached. This selective activation helped the malware evade scrutiny and remain undetected for longer on developer machines, where the real value, more credentials and broader access, resided.
So the attackers weren't just flinging mud, they were meticulously planning their propagation. It's a testament to the sophistication when you see these kinds of multi-stage payloads and evasive tactics. But how did TanStack or anyone even catch this? This sounds like it was designed to be incredibly stealthy.
The detection actually came from a somewhat unexpected source. A maintainer noticed an unusual PNPM process consuming significant CPU in top on their machine. PNPM is a package manager, but this particular process was not something they had initiated or expected to see running persistently.
So it wasn't an automated security alert, but a human noticing something off about their system's behavior. That's a crucial point, highlighting the role of vigilant developers.
Indeed, that initial observation prompted an investigation. Further audit logs revealed suspicious NPM publish activities from compromised accounts, pushing new versions of packages, including some that were entirely new and not legitimate TanStack projects, like @TanStack Bling.
These new versions were quickly identified as malicious and reverted.
@TanStack Bling, a fake package designed to blend in. It's a classic attacker tactic, naming something to appear legitimate. What was the scope of the impact beyond just TanStack's packages? How far did this mini Shai-Hulud burrow?
The postmortem indicates a much broader impact. While TanStack had 4 of its packages compromised, the investigation revealed that approximately 50 to 60 packages across multiple organizations were affected, impacting 20 to 30 user accounts in total. This underscores the scale of the supply chain compromise that a single credential breach can enable. That's a significant number. It illustrates how interconnected the NPM ecosystem is, where a compromise in one corner can quickly spread its tendrils. It's like one infected node in a network can bring down many others.
The report frames it well. The attacker's goal was clearly to expand their access within the NPM ecosystem, likely to continue spreading the worm or to monetize the compromised accounts and packages in other ways. The NPM registry serves as a central point of trust, and exploiting that trust has cascading effects.
Given the scale and sophistication, what was the immediate response from TanStack once this was discovered, beyond just reverting the malicious packages?
The immediate response was swift and multi-pronged. First, all NPM tokens associated with the compromised accounts were revoked and passwords were reset. Crucially, multi-factor authentication, or 2FA, was enforced across all maintainer accounts to prevent future similar attacks.
Enforced is a key word there. It implies that while 2FA might have been available, it wasn't universally required beforehand.
Exactly. This incident highlighted the need for mandatory 2FA. Beyond that, they contacted NPM Security, GitHub, and other affected package maintainers to coordinate efforts and ensure a broader cleanup. They also conducted thorough forensic analysis to understand the full scope of the worm's behavior and its two-stage payload.
And looking forward, how did they adjust their processes to prevent a recurrence? What are the long-term takeaways from this mini Shai-Hulud incident?
The incident led to several critical improvements. Firstly, the universal enforcement of 2FA for all maintainer accounts is paramount. Secondly, they moved towards a fully automated semantic release process, which helps prevent manual, potentially malicious package publishing.
So, removing the human in the loop for package releases, essentially reducing the attack surface.
Precisely. They also enhanced their build process to better scrutinize dependencies and detect unusual activities. And, significantly, they focused on educating their maintainers about social engineering tactics, recognizing that the human element is often the weakest link in the security chain. The emphasis is on layered defense, technical controls like automated releases and 2FA, combined with improved human awareness.
It seems like a constant arms race. Attackers get more sophisticated with social engineering and multi-stage payloads, and defenders have to continually adapt their processes and education.
That's the reality of software supply chain security. The mini Shai-Hulud serves as a stark reminder that even well-maintained, popular projects are vulnerable if the human credentials protecting them are compromised. The trust placed in developers and their accounts is a powerful yet fragile asset.
So, what's the ultimate takeaway for anyone involved in the software supply chain, whether they're a developer, a maintainer, or a consumer of packages?
The first insight is that social engineering remains a primary and highly effective attack vector. Investing in technical defenses without addressing human vulnerabilities is like locking the front door while leaving the windows wide open. The second is the critical importance of universal multi-factor authentication, not just as an option, but as a mandatory control for any accounts with elevated privileges. Thirdly, be suspicious of unusual activity. That unusual PNPN process was the key to uncovering a sophisticated attack.
And beyond individual vigilance?
Fourth, the incident highlights the ripple effect of compromise in a deeply interconnected supply chain. A single breach can affect dozens of organizations and hundreds of packages. Finally, implementing automated, secure release processes can significantly reduce the window of opportunity for attackers to inject malicious code through compromised human access. It's about reducing manual intervention where trust can be exploited.
This incident shows that the worm doesn't need to be some incredibly complex piece of code. It just needs to exploit a fundamental point of trust and then spread systematically. One might wonder how many other mini Shai-Huluds are out there, perhaps still silently burrowing, gathering credentials, waiting for their second stage to activate.
And what mechanisms are truly in place beyond individual developer vigilance to detect these highly stealthy, multi-stage attacks that specifically target the credentials and environment of developer machines, rather than just public-facing servers?
That's a wrap on this debug log. Join us next time for more engineering war stories and hard-won lessons. If any of this hit close to home, subscribe and tell your team.
Ship it carefully.